Since the dawn of time, mankind has been investing a lot of time and effort into establishing supremacy over others. Humanity as a whole is extremely competitive, narcissistic, and more territorial than any other animal on our planet. Our history is full of people who tried to conquer other countries and even rule the world, with Adolf Hitler being the latest example of that. Although wars are still fought in many countries over the world, historians believe that we are living in a time of peace. Nevertheless, there have always been countries and nations that were almost never invaded. These countries have what it takes to keep their enemies at bay. But before we get to them, make sure you tap the bell icon for more notifications and subscribe to the channel. Bhutan. This tiny country located in Southeast Asia is surrounded by the majestic Himalayan peaks. Bhutan has an army of 7,000 soldiers and just 2 aircraft. Due to its unique location, all previous efforts of invasion have proved to be futile. By the time any army would make it to Bhutan, they would be exhausted by the altitude sickness and their resources would be depleted. Additionally, Bhutan is a self-sufficient country that is not engaged in international politics. Its citizens are devoted to peace and the entire country is pretty much more neutral than Switzerland. Bhutan's insignificance and isolation are its biggest protectors. Iran. There are a handful of countries that have so many enemies the entire world wants to see their demise, and Iran is at the top of that list. For thousands of years, wars have been present in the Middle East, and Iran is keeping the tradition by pushing their limits with the rest of the world. They've been in wars with other countries, they've had civil wars, and with the age of modern weapons, they've been fighting wars with countries on other continents. Nevertheless, Iran has managed to keep invaders at bay for many years now. The country's biggest advantage is its geographical position, which allows it to be shielded by mountain peaks on all sides. Those mountains hide bunkers, numerous underground tunnels that stretch across the country, and house state-of-the-art tech that monitors the ground 24/7. Not only that, but Iran has 5 million soldiers, 1,658 tanks, 137 fighter planes, and an advanced arsenal of nuclear ammunition. Why on earth would anyone want to invade them? Right? Australia. The geographic position of Australia is its biggest immunity against any potential invaders. It's practically an island, and 70% of the landmass is covered by an endless desert. The country's closest possible enemy is Japan, but the two are separated by the Pacific Ocean and are 6,835 miles away from each other. The Japanese tried to invade Australia in World War II, but changed their mind when they realized they would first have to cross 11,000 kilometers to get to the world's favorite oversized island. And even if they did, they would be welcomed by the Australian outback, which means that the Australian army wouldn't have to try hard to defeat its enemies. Switzerland. Just like Bhutan, Switzerland is famous for the lack of interest in international politics. The country has no enemies and is on good terms with every major country in the world. And although Switzerland has never been in a war, they are one of the most powerful countries on the planet. Almost every superpower in the world holds their monetary assets in Swiss banks, which means that if anyone were to invade Switzerland, they would have to deal with the rest of the world's superpowers. If these superpowers don't persuade invaders to give up, Switzerland's defense system will. The country has hidden bunkers and fortresses in the Alps constantly monitoring the perimeter, so if anyone does decide to invade, they wouldn't get far. North Korea. This country has been making headlines for 100 years. North Korea has the second largest army in the world, with 700,000 active and 4.5 million reserve military personnel, 4,200 tanks, 458 fighter planes, close to 1,000 battleships, and 8 nuclear warheads. They are second only to the United States. This tiny country is so difficult to invade that during the 1950s Korean War, not even South Korea and the United States were able to conquer it. The other reason no one dares to invade North Korea is their relationship with China, and not even the United States are willing to risk ruining their already crumbling relations with China. United Kingdom. The United Kingdom is just another island nation, but one of the most powerful forces in the world, neck to neck with Germany, Russia, USA, and China. The only way this country can be invaded is through the English Channel, and it was already proven impossible during World War II. But even if someone were to invade the United Kingdom, their army and allies would be able to handle the enemy in a matter of hours. Every single year, this country invests over $55 billion into their defense, which is the fifth largest military budget in the world. All that money goes into training new soldiers and acquiring military equipment. And if that doesn't persuade you, the NATO agreement will. The United Kingdom is allies with all superpowers in the world, and that's that. Canada. If the empty deserts of Australia aren't that appealing to you, the world's second largest country by surface area is going to be even less appealing. Even though Canada has a population of just 37.6 million, its geographic location is its biggest strength. It is surrounded by glacial waters on three sides, which means it can only be effectively invaded through land. But if anyone were to try that, they would have to go through the United States first. Considering that Canada is a peaceful country with numerous allies, invading is simply illogical. Japan. Although 1.6 times larger than the United Kingdom, Japan is a tiny island in comparison to Australia. Tiny, but extremely powerful. Japan has the fourth largest economy in the world, with annual military budget of over $50 billion. As a matter of fact, their technological supremacy is unmatchable. If you remember, the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs onto this tiny country to end World War II. If the fact that this is an island country doesn't deter the enemy, then their army and allies will. Only a fool would try to invade Japan. Russia. One of the biggest defenses of Russia is its sheer size. It's the largest country in the world, and even the most famous invaders such as Hitler and Napoleon weren't able to conquer it. When discussing potential invasions, Russia's generals often joke that they would have nothing to do. All they would have to do is wait for the rough climate to take care of the enemy. And if the climate doesn't do it, then it's 850,000 active personnel, 3,500 military aircraft, and a whopping 7,000 nuclear missiles would. Russia has mentioned on several occasions that they wouldn't restrain from nuking their own country to kill the enemy. Talk about extreme measures. United States of America. It makes sense for the United States to be on this list, as they have been in many wars, but none of them were led on their own land. This country has so much military power they can destroy pretty much every country in the world not once but 7 times. The United States has an annual military budget of $600 billion. The majority of its citizens receive some form of military training during their life and are taught that owning a gun is a must, and legal for that matter. Guns are so not frowned upon that on every 100 people, there are 112 guns. The US is surrounded by massive oceans on 2 sides. It has deserts, multiple mountain ranges, snowy landscapes, and every single country in the world for an ally. In order to invade this country, every other superpower in the world would need to join forces before doing that, which is never going to happen. Do you consider the United States to be the largest superpower on the planet? Do you approve of their approach to international politics? Or do you prefer countries such as Bhutan and Switzerland? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe.
We'll show you everything worth knowing.